Okay. Hello. Welcome. This is the Belongfulness Show. I'm Tony Bacigalupo, and I am working on figuring out how to save us from ourselves, how to address this loneliness epidemic, help us find greater connection to one another and to ourselves. And I am joined today by the wonderful Ani Castillo. Welcome, Ani.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. So nice being with you here.
So Ani is the author of a couple of books, including Ping and Spark, which I am excited for you to tell us more about in a moment. But just to give everybody a little background on how we are talking to each other, we were both at a book launch for a mutual friend of ours who launched a book called Project Unlonely. Jeremy Nobel, who has been working on unloneliness projects, films, and summits for some time, and recently launched this book. And I noticed that Ani was showing off a new book of hers to somebody else, and the title caught me because the title of that book was "People Are My Favorite Places," which comes out in the beginning. Is it January of 2024?
Yeah, January of 2024. Yay.
Yeah. And I was just utterly blown away. And then we had an awesome conversation. And I said, we have to sit down and record a conversation. So yeah. So first of all, catch us up. How did you end up? You're in Toronto, but you were in New York, and you
Mhm.
ended up at this event, and you did not know anybody at this event.
Yeah, that's true.
How did you end up there? What happened?
I I was visiting New York, part of it to meet with my publisher about this upcoming book and like to record a little video for promotion and marketing. And also I was cat sitting with a friend, which was awesome because that gave me time to actually explore New York. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I went there with the mindset like every day I'm gonna meet one person. That was my goal for the day. Every day I want to meet. I had a couple goals that I wanted when I was there. One of them was meet a person a day, and just because it's the people there are so fascinating, and I find it really easy to talk to people there, or people are really open to talk. That's what I find. And so what I do, I go to Eventbrite like to meetup.com, and then I see what events catch my eye. And that one was, the book is called Project on Lonely. So immediately that caught my eye because I'm very, very aware of loneliness. I've suffered a lot of it myself. When I read somebody was writing about it, immediately I knew I had to be there immediately. So I learned like an hour before the event, and I just like ran to the subway, and I ended up there because I really wanted to hear what this person was gonna say, and it didn't disappoint. It's really excellent. And now I'm reading the book Project on Lonely, and it's wonderful, and it's such an important subject right now for humans to be talking about connection
I
and
completely
disconnection, basically like how we're disconnected from one another, and how this affects us in so many levels. It affects our health, like physically people can get like hurt
mm,
from being lonely, physically get sick. Or if you're sick, you cannot recover as quickly if you're lonely as if you feel like there's people who care about you. Loneliness is this very pervasive,
mm,
sad situation that it got worse through COVID. But I think what COVID did is it allowed us to talk about it. But it was happening before already. Even for me, as a single mom, immigrant, writer, like I'm usually by myself in my house writing. So when COVID was happening, I was like, oh, now everybody's living like me. So honestly, that's the way it felt like. Why is everybody making such a big deal out of this? We're just in our house all the time. So that's the way I've lived my whole life. But then I didn't have the afternoons or the nights when that's the time when I usually socialize. That's what changed for me. The morning to afternoon didn't change for me, but the nights were extremely lonely. And as I say, some people had families during COVID that you could go to their front garden, or you could go visit them outside of their window or something.
mm,
But for an immigrant, you didn't have a single person who will take that risk for you, you
mm.
know? because family will take the risk of dying for you. But when I was here as an immigrant, single person, all of that stuff, I was really, really on my own. It was very hard. And that's when I realized I think I've been lonely all these years and I didn't recognize it. Now that it has become so acute and so terribly painful, now
Mm.
it has come to my attention that maybe it's not that healthy the way I've been living. Like just never seeing people during the day. And these days I'm trying to find more of a balance. And this trip to New York is part of this exercise I've been doing. Like I would like I'm gonna be in an apartment, but I'm gonna go out every day. I also,
Yes.
you know that movie, The Groundhog Day? I find it
Yeah, of
really
course, one of my
inspiring.
favorite movies.
Isn't he crazy? Like he's in this little town and he's like, I'm gonna enjoy every bar, every restaurant, every person who lives here. And I feel like my friend showed me that movie and really woke me up somehow. I was like, you can be in a place and you can just give for granted everything that you have around you, and or you can actually see how can you love them, all of them, all the places, and try to, and as a result you feel better by loving places, by loving people more than anything, people, to be honest, and getting to know people. And I feel like since I watched that movie, I'm like, I've been trying to go out every day to see people, to see places, to live more like that, more alive, really. That's the thing, connection makes you more alive. You know,
Mm.
when you face one person, they see you, they see a part of you that other people don't see.
Yeah.
So you need to see more people that just basically, I have this theory, the theory that I created this theory when I started dating,
Okay.
because I was because I was married and then I got divorced, so I started dating and I created this theory that is called the disco ball theory.
Oh, okay.
The disco ball theory is that we're all like a disco ball and we're covered in little mirrors, and every person that comes to your life is like a new light that shines on you and wakes up like a different area of mirrors. You know that they were there latent, waiting to be awakened, but you
Mm.
had to touch one person, you had to be touched by this person's light in order for that part of yourself to wake up. And even through dating, some people introduce me to biking, some people introduce me to politics, some people introduce me to different places and different things. And when I started dating with that mindset, like everybody's gonna wake up something new in me and I'm gonna learn
Mm.
something from every person, that's when I was it's a scary thing, honestly, to date. So put yourself out there. But when I was like, I want to learn something out of every person that I meet, that's when things got a little bit less scary for me. And yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
So you bring up a few really important points here, and I'll start with Groundhog Day. First of all, you open the door. It
Mm.
maybe is my favorite movie because it is a great comedy. It's a '90s comedy. Andy McDowell and Bill Murray is just one of my favorites. But the thing that really gets me about the movie is that it is this absurd, impossible scenario. It's not, something that it happens in the real world. And at the same time, his experience is so relatable and so allegorical to life that
Mhm.
there's the one scene where he's sitting at the bar and he says, "Well, what would you do if every day was the same and nothing you did mattered?" And the two drunk guys next to him are like, "Well, sums it up for me." And that was kind of like the whole message of the movie is like, this isn't fiction about this
Mhm.
guy's impossible thing. This is a real life situation that people find themselves in, where every day
That's
is the
what I
same
feel.
and nothing matters.
Hmm.
And we have agency over that, even if it seems impossible.
Yeah,
And I just love that message in that movie for sure.
I agree. I agree. I felt the same. I think that's why it stirred me up so much, that movie. It's because I'm like, even though I am getting older, that's the only difference. I'm getting older, but like, he doesn't get old. That's the only difference.
Sure.
But I feel like so many of my days tend to be the same. And as I say, during COVID, so acutely feeling like really that's what it is every day. But even in the regular life, a lot of the time we live like that. We go to the
Mm,
same place, we stay in the same area, we see the same people, and we don't branch out. And as I say, I feel like meeting people is living more life, is being more you, being
Mhm.
more of you for more, like opening more doors, opening more parts of yourself, and and that's the thing. When you are with yourself, with your own voice, and you're closed down, I feel like you're closing yourself to a lot of living life. That's what it feels like to me. So yeah, no, I like that you mentioned that bar scene. I didn't remember the bar scene, but now that you say it like that, I think that's why precisely why it touched me so much, because I feel like this is the way we live. The only difference with Bill Murray is that we're getting older. So
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the movie gives us the ability to go through this fictional scenario of, like, he can die and come
yeah,
back to life, so we can see all these different scenarios of how he handles the same situation. Um,
hmm,
but, so one of the things that I think is very interesting about what you're describing is that, you know, people do bring out different sides of us, meeting new people, interacting with people, reflecting different aspects of our disco ball. And at the same time, a lot of people are tired. A lot of people feel reluctant to go out into the world and meet people because maybe they see it as risky
yeah,
or difficult to really kind of integrate. And
hmm,
I wonder, you know, for your story, has it I can't imagine it's always been easy to go out and, you know, go to an event where you don't know anybody at the last minute or go dating and meet new people. Is there
no.
something that kind of, you know, was there a time where things were kind of all the same for you and you made a decision that changed that?
Yeah, actually, in my Instagram, I don't know if you saw, but I'm playing with videos now. I'm playing with reels. I just did a reel exactly about social anxiety,
Mm,
and I don't know if you saw it, but it is very it's precise. It talks about precisely about this thing. It's been the hardest thing for me. I was born with social anxiety, or it was given to me by experience. I don't know, but I'm one of the people on Earth who had received the gift, the terrible gift of social anxiety. It's really bad, and at some point I couldn't do anything, and that was as a in mid when I was in middle school. I had a best friend and I was very happy. But then she broke up with me. She one day she told me, "You're not cool. So if I keep hanging out with you, I'm never gonna be cool either. So I'm just gonna be a nerd like you." And I had like
ouch.
that was the biggest rejection I've ever received in my life. And suddenly, oh, you're going there.
I
That's the
I'm just
one.
gonna have this kind of run while you're talking here so people can
So
see a little bit of your art.
So yeah, like yeah, they could go see it because part of it is like the audio. I worked so hard on the audio. I never done that. It was really fun.
Oh.
But thank you for bringing it up. But yeah, like since middle school, because of that rejection, public rejection, it was like Angelina and Brad Pitt, basically, no, Jennifer Aniston being rejected by Brad Pitt publicly. That brings that other people reject you, you know. So my classroom rejected me because I was rejected publicly. So suddenly I was very isolated, 13, 14 years old, when you're so tender and you're so fragile at that time. That's when
Yeah,
I didn't have any friends. So I lived most of my life without friends since then. Like I had a couple good friends that they're there, but there were years that I didn't have a single person to talk to. It was very sad. And when you don't have a single person to talk to, or you feel so scared to be rejected again, you start just listening to this voice that is your own, and it's just like you're like and you know the book about loneliness, what it says precisely is that loneliness, one of the bad things about loneliness is that it
mm,
makes you feel ashamed, because you
mm,
feel you deserve to be lonely, because you're there's something wrong with you. That's why you're
mm,
lonely, and that's why people are embarrassed of being lonely, feeling lonely. um but what I was experiencing is like for many years I didn't have friends. Then I moved to Canada and I didn't know the language, so for 6 years I didn't speak until I started going to therapy and all of that. So just to make it short, it was I don't think you've met a person that it was harder for to talk to people than for me. It was a phobia. It was a phobia to the point that they had to make me have exposure therapy. And
yeah,
exposure therapy is like when you have to like try a little bit, like introduce the phobia a little bit. And my therapist introduced people, like almost like you have phobia of snakes or
yeah.
heights, they had to introduce interactions with people little by little, and they started giving me homework, and I started having to talk to a stranger in the street, and like go to a party, and like when I was going through therapy, like they would make me fill up these forms, and it's like, what is the biggest, like if you go to a party from 0 to 10, how scared you feel or how much
Yeah.
anxiety? It was always 100, to 100,
Wow.
everything.
Wow.
Even going to the bank, even paying at the cashier, I couldn't speak. I was like mute for years. So it was very, I don't, as I say, you haven't met somebody with more social anxiety that I had at the time. But with therapy, and in this cartoon, it talks about a lot. I hope people with social anxiety read this cartoon because it explains a lot how I felt, how I went to therapy. They helped me listen to my thoughts. And I don't know if you remember the question that I made at the of the book launch, that it was about the inner voice, because for me, my inner voice, it was really bad, and it was telling me
Mm,
nobody wants to be your friend, nobody wants to be around you, you're a loser, nobody likes you, nobody loves you, and nobody's ever gonna like you. And that's what therapy helped me recognize these thoughts as thoughts and say, like, this is a thought happening. This is not governing reality. It's just a thought.
mm,
But I think those terrible thoughts are what stop people, that those
mm,
thoughts saying people are gonna reject you, so when and people don't like you and all of that. So part of my exposure therapy for to my phobia that I had of people, I had to do social experiments that it was like, today I'm going to talk to a stranger in the street, and I had to
mm.
write like, what do I think is gonna happen. And I always wrote like, they're gonna get angry at me, they're gonna yell at me, and they're gonna tell me they don't like me. But then once I went there and I was like sweating, and I was like, "Hey, how are ya?" And then
Hey.
they will be friendly, and then I will go back and I will write in my journal like, they did not get angry. They said hi back or
Yeah.
something. Or sometimes my assumption, like if I say like, oh, I had to have a sleepover as one of my social experiments, and I'm like, I'm
Mm,
gonna feel really uncomfortable. I went, I did it, and I was so uncomfortable. So then you write about it, and then you're like, okay, but I survived, you know. And if you
mm,
get rejected, you survive. Like, so that's the social experiments were, first of all, to see how um, a lot of them end up positively,
mm,
and then the ones that end up negatively, you survive them, they don't kill you. So that's another
mm,
thing, that with social anxiety, you're like thinking you're gonna get rejected and you won't be able to survive the horrible pain because it has been so hard in the past. It's true, it is really hard, but you teaching yourself to fail even socially, with those kinds of experiments. And actually, my first book, Ping, um and I don't know if you've seen my book, Pink, but it's about connecting. And the philosophy behind it is, in this life we can only ping, the pong belongs to the other. We can only put ourselves out there, we cannot control anything else. We can only put our intention, we can only put our love, our art, our creation, and our intention basically out there. And if people don't react to it as we're expecting them to, or as good as we hope they would, that's not on us, that's on them. So that is very liberating, because it's just like, yeah, I don't know. There's, yeah, I could go on and on, but that is that thing that I'm very passionate about. We are free. My book, Ping, is about liberating people, to tell people we are free to ping. We are free to try. We are free to reach out. Whatever response we get depends on the other person, and they are free too. We have a division of, oh, there it is. That's Ping.
cool.
Yeah.
We talked about this when we met in person, and I just thought it was so neat to have such a simple construct. But I think for what you're describing, especially overcoming social anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself out into the world, and just setting expectations that you control your ping, you
Yeah.
don't control the pong, and that's all that really you're going to experience in life is the stuff that
Mm-hmm.
you can control and the stuff that you can't, and having just clarity around the fact that those two things exist and they are what they are, and you focus on one, and you focus on, maybe how you handle the pong in response, I just think
Mhm.
it's really, really helpful and, valuable. I'm sure really valuable even for younger folks who maybe, are learning this for the first time, but probably adults too.
Yeah, no, I actually when I wrote this book, I was a cartoonist for the newspaper, so when I wrote it for people of all ages. It has been
Mm,
published as a children's book, but a lot of people who have found it organically around the world, it's also adults. Adults
mhm.
who really got touched by the message and then start reading it to their friends. It was even in Japan. The translator of Ping was like a Japanese daughter of a actor or musician or something. She loved it so much that she read Ping on live national TV in Japan because
What?
he loved it so much. Yeah, it's somewhere in my Instagram. But what I mean is like when adults find the message of Ping, they find it really helpful too. Yeah, a lot of people who have found it organically are adults.
Yeah.
So I just hope that it can help as many people as possible.
That's amazing, and I feel like it's just so important to be able to have that message for folks and just give them tools to work with.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
ma-
it's a tool actually. That's the word. When I was creating Ping, I was like, this book is a tool. The reason why I got very obsessed about publishing is because I made the tool for myself.
mm,
And I told myself I can only ping, I can only ping. So
mhm,
when an idea keeps coming back at me, and when I start finding it really helpful,
mm,
then that's when I start thinking I need to share this with my fellow humans because it may help them too. And I think because it has helped me so much, I'm like I wanna share this with other human beings.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
the dedication of the book is says to my beloved fellow humans because I'm like, he liberated me that tool. So I hope it can help other people too.
I feel like Anna, your journey is just such an inspiration because when I met you, you were this person who would come to this event where you didn't know anybody at the last minute without any preparation. You were clearly just so inviting and engaging. You were talking to someone you didn't know when I met you and we started talking, and like you seem so kind of, I want to say, naturally social and sociable, but to know the backstory of how far you have come to be where you are now, it's just, I think it's such a huge inspiration, and it seems like what you're doing is really giving people, tools for if they're in similar situations to be able to move
Mhm.
themselves through it. Do you have any other kind of tips or guidance, maybe things you would tell yourself if you were to do it over from scratch, or maybe tell to someone who doesn't necessarily have the background of having gone through therapy and those kinds of things?
Mhm.
What would you suggest somebody does if they're maybe in a similar, maybe not quite as severe, but in a similar situation?
I actually started putting out. I want to make another book that is. Remember at that talk that we went to. My question was about the inner voice because they talk about the story about a woman whose friends weren't being supportive of her when she got
Mm.
really sick, and then she told herself, "I need to get my friends to be supportive of me because I'm sick." And then
Mhm.
she just interacted with them in a different way, which helped everybody come together. But my question is like, what if I'm like if like what if the same woman was sick, but what
Mm.
if she assumed her friends didn't love her instead of saying like, oh, I'm just gonna rally up my friends and get them to help me because I'm sick.
Mhm.
I think so much depends on those messages because what she told herself is my friends love me, I'm gonna get them to help me. But
Mm.
for somebody who has social anxiety, and if you get sick and then your friends don't help you, immediately like my friends don't love me. They have never loved me. That will be, and I knew it. I knew it all this time. So that is the huge, 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 huge problem that I have with like no problem that I have. I don't have a problem with it. But I just noticed that humans have a voice inside us that it can be really nasty a lot of the time and really cruel. So a little project that I started when I was in New York, actually, I've been working on this for a while before New York, but
Mm.
I did some street art installations with like some wheat pasting with some posters. A new character that I have is called the friend within.
Mm.
So, and I actually, the previous reel that I have in my Instagram is about the friend within, is a guy with a little face, heart face, I mean. So this friend within is a new tool that I am creating for myself again. And it's like, when I hear my voice getting really nasty towards myself inside of my head, what I do is I ask, am I speaking to myself like I will speak to my friend? Like, and usually that's not the case. Like, for example, that word, like, nobody likes you, nobody wants to be your friend, you're terrible, you're stupid, or whatever. You will never speak like that to a friend, or they wouldn't be your friend. So it has a lot to do with self-compassion. And but I will say to people, the main thing that helped me so much when I went to therapy, and that's what is in my reel, is recognizing when you're thinking something. Because a thought can make you behave in a way. If you tell yourself nobody likes me, when I went to this talk, for example, first of all, I get really nervous going to a crowd. So when I tell myself on my way there, I'm brainwashing myself the whole way there because I get really nervous. So I'm usually telling myself, like, this is gonna be the best event ever. Like, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be so great. And I live with this extreme voice that I'm just pretending, kind of, because I'm doing it very, like, consciously, and I'm like, it's gonna be the best, it's gonna be awesome, it's gonna be amazing. And I actually read in a book that is called The Upward Spiral, that is about getting out of depression. How, if you, most humans, you have an event, you have like a wedding or something, and you immediately tell yourself all the things that may go wrong. That's the normal thing for a human to experience, which isn't it crazy? Who designed us this way? But it, like, that's the first thing we start thinking, is all the things that could go wrong. That's normal. So then if you counteract that, and you say it could be fun, then your brain releases chemicals that then your brain is like, it starts creating this possible scene. It's just like, yeah, it may be fun. And it says, like, as after you've done this for a while, then your brain, it says, the book says, you don't even need to believe it. You don't need to believe it, just tell yourself this might be fun. And then through practice, your brain is going to start to believe you. And then you can even start saying, like, this is going to be amazing. And then you hype yourself up. I've done this for so many things. Even for my driving test, I was like, this is going to be so much fun. Like, I live always with that. Like, I have to use so many tools during the day, and that's one that is really helpful. First, like, use, if I could tell that to every human on earth, use, realize your thoughts is not you. Your thoughts are happening to you. And that's the thing about awareness and meditation and consciousness. You are the consciousness. Thoughts are phenomena going, happening like popcorn. And you can actually, like, feel them and see them and say, I agree with this one, I don't agree with this one. It is hard, but I also feel like it's really helpful. That when going to therapy, that was the biggest revelation for me. Just, like, look at your thoughts, like, observe your thoughts, and if you need to, you can challenge them. And when it comes to social anxiety, another thing that I do going into a room,
Mm.
uh, is like, you start saying to myself, these are all my friends. It sounds really silly, but a tool that I started working on when I was in New York, looking at a person's face and saying, you're my friend, or this,
Mm.
he's my friend, she's my friend, he's my friend. And try it, Tony. Try it one day.
Mm.
Go in the subway, just look at a person and say, he's my friend. And suddenly their face changes for you. They become
Mm.
like family. And then I bet you that something changes in your own face because
Mhm.
people treat you more like a friend. And I told this to my children, but I'm like, be careful, don't do that with psychopaths. But just, like, if you're a little bit nervous with people and if you wanna feel more comfortable yourself, I swear that there must be something that happened to your own face because people treat you in a softer way and more human.
Mm.
If you go to a cashier and you do that, like, you're my friend, so then
Mm.
it's like a spark happens, and then it's easier. And and I don't feel scared to talk to the person. And I bet you what happens is something happens, maybe micro muscles, or like my demeanor changes or something, because people talk to you more warmly. But as I say, because I've had such terrible social anxiety, I have to live always under, so like, all with the support of so many tools all the time, all the
Mm.
time, all the time. Even for this, I'm like, this this is gonna be awesome. This recording is gonna be the best recording in the planet. And, then you just, you just tell yourself these things, and then you're not as scared. Basically, you're not that scared, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the 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 value and the function of doing that is less about convincing yourself this is gonna be the greatest thing ever, I'm gonna be friends with every person, but more just trying to kind of fill the space in
Hmm.
your brain with
Yeah,
thoughts that aren't the really terrible thoughts.
I guess that's a way to put it. Yeah, just push the other ones. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
because
kinda crowd them out a little bit.
I think that's what it is exactly. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is.
And there's something about the optimism, the enthusiasm, and you're right, people are, I think we tend to be very intuitive
Hmm.
creatures that we detect people's energy and
Hmm.
we reflect it. And so we might not even realize we're doing it, but we will feel it if somebody's looking at us or bringing a certain kind of an energy to an interaction. And
Yeah.
so just by looking at someone and saying this person's going to be my friend, it doesn't mean you're being naive, that you're going to let your guard down, that, but you're going to say, I'm going to come to this with the most optimistic outcome in mind.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
that's going to kind of create the opening. I feel like this happens like we see this a lot with negative situations where, maybe if somebody's in a really bad mood and, somebody else detects that and they say, what's going on with you? And it's like, nothing. What's going on with you? It's like
Yeah.
already we're having a fight and it's like nothing even happened yet just because of the energy somebody was bringing.
Yeah, you know what?
Um,
Now that you mentioned that, isn't it a term, neural mirroring, neural mirrors or something? That your
yeah,
neurons
yeah. I
mirror
believe so. Yeah.
something like that. Maybe we're making it up, but I remember, like, I think, yeah, something that, like what you're saying, because there's something that humans have that we mirror the other person. So I feel like there's a lot to that. Yeah.
Yeah, we use the word aping because we imitate each other or we copy each other,
Oh,
like,
I
an ape.
didn't know that one.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
and
it.
so yeah, it's funny, you'll see it, it's kind of a common thing, but when you see apes doing it, you see how we do it as humans too, it's kinda cool.
Oh, it's
But it's
true.
true, so we set an example for the people around us by the way that we behave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you say, negative too. So I do wonder, like, when I was, when I had a really bad social anxiety, people will ask me, like, "Are you okay?" And I
Yeah,
was like, "Yeah, why?"
yeah.
But they were like, "You look worried," and I just imagine my expression, and it was having like,
Mhm,
Patricio from, what is that name? Patrick from SpongeBob,
mhm.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob,
But
yeah.
the guy, the starfish, that he had this face like. I feel like that was my expression when I was really scared of everybody. I was probably really tense and everything, just like thinking, everybody hates me, nobody likes me, nobody wants to be my friend. What can be your body posture when you're saying to yourself of this message, And how is people gonna react warmly to somebody that is like this? So, like, I don't know. Yeah, as you can see, it's been a long process. It's been 10 years that I've been working on on this.
Yeah, well, and it is a process for all of us, and I feel like now, I mean, not to get too topical or anything, but I feel like now we have a lot of issues with tensions. We have a lot of issues with
Mhm.
people who kind of go into a conversation or into an environment kind of expecting or bracing themselves for hostility.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking specifically right now of kind of the online discourse and even now offline where we have a lot of, a lot of craziness going on with the
Yeah.
conflict in the Middle East and I feel like part of it is just that people are kind of expecting for there to be conflict
Mhm.
and bracing themselves for it. And then, the people kind of perceive that and get defensive, and then it kind of manifests into conflict, that
Mm-hmm.
there are probably a lot of people, I think, now who are in a state of conflict with others who don't necessarily have to be. That there's an opportunity for us to, maybe do a little bit of shifting in terms of our energy and saying, maybe this other person doesn't share the exact same viewpoint as I do about a certain situation, but
Yeah.
they're not necessarily evil either. They might just be coming from a different angle, might have some misunderstandings. Like, maybe if I come at it with a attitude of, this is just a person who's trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure it out too, and maybe I can come at it with a little bit of a optimism,
Mm-hmm.
or let me try to see the best in this person, even if it's difficult, just so
Exactly.
just to create the opportunity. And if the person opens their mouth and they're an unmitigated jerk, then, like, let them, they can prove that, but let's try to not, like, assume ill intent
Mm-hmm.
before they prove it to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. And to be honest, even with like I do find the like the state of the world so confusing, because I feel we all want the same thing. We all want
Mm,
the same thing. We all want to be peaceful, healthy, and our family safe, and us being safe. That's what we can agree on. And it's like, why is all of these things happening, taking us out of that like state of well-being? We all just want to be well and we want to be
mm,
safe, and that's what we all want. And you know that tool about like, this person is my friend, I think in this situation is when it will be even more helpful, because it
mm.
will humanize this person. It, just try it. Seriously, promise you're gonna try. Like when you're on the subway, look at people and say, "You're my friend." Even people that sometimes you feel like, oh, that like there's sometimes people that you don't imagine yourself hanging out with.
Yeah.
Even that person, imagine you're my friend. This is my friend. It humanizes them, and suddenly you see them. There's this one day I read about in a book that humans have this instinct: when you see a new person, your brain immediately goes into friend foe,
Mm. Mhm.
because that was like our ancestors, what they had to do in order to survive.
Mhm.
And we, a lot of them, we go to foe, like, which is othering. This doesn't another person. That's not like me and my gang. They're like an other person. So I feel
Mhm.
we're doing a lot of like othering situations,
Yeah.
and I find that, yeah, that's a hard thing to break down. But I just, as I say, like, trying to, as you say too, just try to don't assume ill intent, and think that most people that are fighting for things or whatever, they're not fighting to, oh, I'm gonna hurt somebody. They're
Yeah.
either fighting because they want their people to be safe or themselves to be safe, and because they're scared. Like so many
Mm.
people are scared. So many actions come out of fear. So like so much of it, and also bad communication. I feel like a lot of bad communication. I feel like, imagine if countries communicated with one another saying, we want to be safe, I want to
Yeah.
be safe too. How can we be safe and happy? Then just like, it's a lot of like, I cannot solve all the problems in the world, but I feel like a lot comes down to a lack of understanding that we all want the same things.
Mm.
And if we work together towards that, like it wouldn't be any wars or anything.
Mm.
But I also feel like, I also, I feel also that a lot of problems in the world come back to the individual. I feel like that's also the fact that there's all this aggression and all of these mental health problems.
Mm.
You must have to do a lot also with what you're telling yourself. What is your inner voice like? Imagine
Mm.
if you went to like the most violent person and you talk to them. Do you think, what do you think their voice is like? You think
Mm.
it's kind and saying
Mm.
like, you're okay, my friend, you're okay, you're safe, you're not doing anything bad, we're just gonna be here. Like, I don't imagine their inner voice is very gentle or kind.
Mm.
Like, it's hurt people. And I come from Mexico, where there's a lot of hurt people. There's like stray children.
Mm.
And what are the voices that they hear growing up in the street? So how can you not expect them to be so like completely out of a moral compass? Like there was nobody there to teach them. I just feel they needs to be a huge movement in the world where we learn how to be kinder to our towards ourselves.
Mm,
Then I feel like that will have repercussions in the bigger world. And you know that big movement of like the kindness meditation, like may I be safe, and then you
mm,
visualize may you be safe and all of that stuff. It makes people more peaceful. Imagine if everybody did that. Imagine if they went and like all of these like armies, they gave them mindful practice meditation
mm,
of like kindness. Like, do you imagine they could do that? No, it's as I said, a lot of it. It's I think a lot of it is like the relationship with your mental health with yourself and all of that. I feel like making healthier individuals as society, it will make you also more compassionate towards other people.
yeah.
I don't know. I think we're all trying to solve this problem, and we're like, how can we solve it with my set of tools? I want to solve it. I feel like everybody's trying to solve this, but I think the only thing that will create peace is just remind ourselves, everybody, that we're the same, that we're humans, and that we want the same thing, and that we could potentially all be friends. Is
Mm.
that too idealistic to hope for?
Well, I think one of the things that is important now is that folks like yourself are not giving up on the conversation, that
Mm-hmm.
we need imagination, we need experimentation, we need, concerted effort because just throwing up our hands and saying, "Well, everything sucks and nothing I do is going to help." Like, that's not going to then we're definitely not going to get anywhere. But
Mm-hmm.
if we do say, maybe there are things we can do that can at least try to open ourselves up to some possibilities, then that at least gives us a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe doesn't solve our big problems today, but maybe helps to lay that groundwork for a better future over the course of time. That we're planting seeds that will grow over time. So,
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
feel like, I think big part is like saying that's our other people. I feel
Mm.
that's a huge part of it. Like if we could humanize one, like in Mexico, I grew up without knowing any gay people, for example. And then I didn't know what to think about gay people, and my parents didn't know anything about gay people. So then I meet my first gay friend, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, so it's just I'm starting to enter the world, and I start understanding. I used to see them because it's also Mexico tends to be very traditional and very
Mhm, mhm,
all of that stuff. So my parents didn't like the idea about the gay people.
mhm.
So, but then once I started meeting more gay people, then I'm like, okay, they're nice people out there, and they're gay. They're just the same as me. They just
Yeah,
are with other guys of their same gender. That's the only difference. But what I mean is, before I knew them, they were all there for me,
yeah,
even for my parents. Then I
right.
started meeting them and introducing them to my parents. And
Yeah.
it's almost like meeting a Disney character, like, really? Are you gay? Like, it's just like, can I touch you? You exist. And then suddenly they accept the idea, and they start being accepting of it. It's still a little bit of a shock for them because they didn't exist before they weren't out.
Yeah.
So
But
and
that what you're describing, I think, is so spot on, and it's a big part of why maybe there is a lot of othering now because
mhm,
there is so much separation, so
yes,
much people are spending so much time at home, or at least within their
mhm,
own kind of circles, and we're spending less and less time uh, interacting with each other in real life. And that is, I think, contributing a lot to the tearing of our social fabric. This is what a lot of people have talked about. Robert Putnam and Bowling Alone, and a lot of the things that I'm sure Jeremy Nobel in his book talks about. That if we're not seeing each other, physically seeing each other, then we
mhm.
we open ourselves up to that othering that allows for this to happen. I forget who said it. It was somebody. I'm. I'll have to attribute the quote in the follow up, but they said it's really hard to hate someone when you're looking them in the eye.
Well, there you
And
go. Exactly.
yeah,
That I got goosebumps because that's exactly what I mean. That is
Yeah.
exactly what I mean. Like useful, like for me and my family, like as I say, gay people were a concept, and they didn't accept of it. I didn't even know what to think about it, to be honest. If I didn't know what I think about it, but then once we introduced one, we're like, oh, you know, they exist. And I
Yeah.
feel the same as for like, Mexicans. Like I feel like Mexicans back in the day, they were seen as like one thing. And the more Mexicans that I see out there in the media saying things and doing things and expressing themselves, then it's like, oh, Mexicans also have this other side to them.
Yeah.
They can be pretty smart. Who knew? Who knew? They go to school and everything, and I feel, as you say, like weird, when we had to remember, when we look at the media, where we look at like many things have been processed by another person or a bunch of
Yeah.
persons or
Yeah.
whatever. But when we go and we see a person of like a race that we haven't been exposed to, or like an orientation we haven't been exposed to, then we
Yeah.
start actually learning these people are human. And I feel like that's what I feel like we need more of exposure to different kinds of people, which has been happening less and less, because
Yeah.
I told you when I met you that I really enjoy going to church for years, right? I told you all this.
Yes,
But
you
when
did.
you was
Yeah, I'm glad we get a chance to talk briefly about this before we run out of time. Yeah.
Yeah, I just for me, church, it was the best. It was my favorite day of the week. My kids were little. It was before the pandemic. I was just so excited to go to church, even though I'm not even that religious. I just like seeing all these people every week. Every week it was the same faces, and they were nice to me, and they wish good for me.
Mm.
And we had like meals together, and we had like coffee hour together at the end of the service, and I was telling you, it's the only time in my life that I have been exposed to all generations of people, like 90
Mm.
year olds and 50-year
Mm.
olds and 20-year olds and babies and everything. And I think churches are amazing just to bring people together. And it's funny that we have to agree to believe in Jesus or Buddha or something. I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like there is a bigger message from churches for me, which is let's get together, be nice to each other every
Yeah.
week, and
Yeah.
just be together. All
Yeah.
races, all classes, all ages, all kinds of family, everything. And then we are exposed actually, like I since then I haven't met another senior citizen. And it's like that
Yeah.
fans are really sad because they are very special too in their own way. And they where am I gonna meet one? Am I like only if I go to like maybe volunteer to the thing? But it does a structured activity that is like, okay, I need to. It's like again, it's like it has like this wall that I'm like I have to go through just to go find myself a nice senior citizen. When in church, they're waiting for you. I
Yeah. No,
feel
it's a very interesting thing. One of the things that studies have shown is probably one of the biggest determinants of someone's uh, social health and well-being is whether or not they attend church. That some people who attend
oh.
or participate in a religious activity, right? So, what's interesting is that being religious isn't the difference. It's if you're
Mhm.
actually showing up and participating in the activities. And
Oh.
yeah, and one of the things that is, that I take away from it is, like forget what you believe or disbelieve or what you ascribe to a certain thing, but what could that look like for you to have that regular thing, to have that intergenerational thing, have that experience where you are, regularly attending something where
Mhm,
you
mhm,
are getting together to participate in this moment of appreciation and whatever it is. And for some people, that might be church. For some people, that might be going to the gym, or it might be, something else. It might be a board game club. Whatever it is, there's just finding that something where you have that experience you're describing of we're here
mhm.
to be happy and be nice to each other and have that. I think is a huge part of the equation when we're ready for it, when we're open to it. And maybe it's as simple, like actually from us having that conversation, I had this thought about what would it look like to just I moved to a new town. What would it look like to post into the subreddit of this town and say, hey, what is the nicest, friendliest, most welcoming religious or quasi religious establishment in town? And like, just go check them out. Like you don't necessarily need to, take an oath, but just to say like, what would it look like to go just check out something that you haven't been to before and
Mhm.
just see what it's like. Could be
Yeah,
cool.
no, I think that's pretty good. And as I say, like, in my opinion, because I tried it, you don't even need to be super religious. Like, you can go there, you can listen to the sermon, and you can participate, you can sing the songs and everything, and you can just try to enjoy what's happening, even if you don't totally believe what they're saying,
Mm,
unless you're against it. Like,
yeah.
you're like, okay, that one, satanic things are too much. So maybe not that one, but like, I told you I grew up Catholic, then I became Buddhist, then I became Anglican, kind of, but like I still feel like I'm mostly Buddhist, but
Mm,
what I liked about the Anglicans is that there was more of a sense of community than the Buddhist temple, because they had
mm,
coffee hour every time after church, and in my experience, you can go there and sing and like all of that, and I bet you release endorphins just by hanging out there with the humans. And even the sermon, I'm like, even if you don't believe all those things, you can listen.
mm,
Even if you imagine, okay, imagine that you don't believe on Jesus. A lot of people believe in Jesus, and I respect. And I grew up believing in Jesus too. And I think even if you read the book as a fable, you're
mm,
like, okay, what can I learn from this book? And then listen to the sermon, and you can find something that you can find useful. Just hunt for something that you find meaningful for you, and then you feel a little bit better, and then you're like,
yeah.
okay, and you hang out. So it's like it's a win-win. And I feel like if we did more of that, I honestly feel like we will be happier. Somewhere I read that people are unhappiest on Sunday mornings because you feel very lost. You don't know what to do on Sunday morning, and
Huh.
usually you just like sleep in, or I read that that's where mood goes down in the weekend, Sunday morning. And I feel when I was going to church, it was the opposite. And that's
Mm,
what that thing that I read said, that like if you have something like church that you go every weekend, it kind of lifts your mood. So,
mm.
and I found that too, and it gets you out of bed, and then you go, and then you have to dress up, and then you're like there wearing makeup, looking cool, your Sunday best. To me, church is like a mood booster. And even though I don't completely believe in, I believe in God, but I think people like me, we create our own spirituality. Like
Mm,
once you have been exposed to enough things, you're like, I think I want to make my own. Or I've had one since I was little, but what I mean is, you don't need to completely subscribe to the beliefs to
mm,
get some of the benefits of just hanging with people that you see the same face every week, and who are committed to being kind to you and to be supportive to you and to just chat. And as I say,
mm.
you meet the babies that are being born, and then you meet the parents, and you meet like the people who just got married, and it feels like a little town somehow. I don't know. It
Mm,
really, I miss it. During the pandemic, my children became teenagers, and then I used to take them there for choir, and I used to be the chaperone. I took them
mhm.
for trips and everything, and I loved it so much. But during the pandemic, they turned into teenagers, and then they don't want to go anymore. So
Yeah.
how am I gonna force them? So, which is really sad, because the teenagers at church, they had this really cute group of teenagers that they were traveling and everything. So I wish they still had that. Anyways,
Mm.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about just kind of winding things down a bit here. Tell me about, you've obviously got a couple of books
Mhm.
out and one coming out, which we haven't even talked about at all. So we're gonna have to do another
Oh,
episode specifically about the book. But what is maybe a book not by you that you just love to share with people that you want people to know about?
Oh, I thought about it, and I never got to any conclusion completely. But a book that when I was in New York, I read a lot about psychology and stuff. There's this book that is called The Source, and it's probably what people will call it self help. It's a neuroscientist, probably. The Source, and it just talks a lot about how you can. how humans, we are very used to seeing ourselves like we are right now and like we were yesterday or before, and that's why we stop ourselves from growing. But if you can imagine and envision yourself as you want to like imagine yourself being,
Mm,
actually you can become that through like creating new neural pathways, and I feel like that has been, I think the way it connected with me is because I have had that experience to myself. Like I was, when I was really shy and I was like, I want to be there talking to people, then you start dreaming about that. But when, and I feel like therapy helped me with that.
mm,
That's how therapy gets you unstuck, because it helps you visualize what you want, not what you are right now or where you are. It's like, what do you want? And then
mm,
once you start visualizing what you want to become, how you want to be, or like what is that you want to be doing, even even the fact, as I say, going into an event telling myself it's going to be the best. It's just like I'm imagining, you, it's a book about living in your imagination, and that's the source of change and growth and like bigger things happening for you, and daring more and reaching out for more and growing
mm.
more. So I'm very into self growth or all of that stuff, and I don't know why that book, The Source, it really, I don't know, I feel like it really affected me. That one, I like it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
And, as far as a, recipe, I know you had sent me one.
yeah, the
Tell me
jericas.
about it.
Yeah. So those kind, I sent it to you. We never make jericayas at home. We buy them in the street in Mexico. They sell them everywhere. But I was like, oh, that's a recipe I would like to I would like to try it here, because around here you can't find that. Even in New
Mm.
York, I didn't find it. I wonder, have you seen them, jericayas?
I don't think so.
No. So there you go. They're from my city, Guadalajara, and I love them. So that's why I sent it. I have not tried them yet. I think I tried them when I was little, but you have to like mix egg and cinnamon and like milk and then vanilla, and then you have to put it in these little ramekins, and then you have to bake them but submerge in water. So it's a very special technique, and then they get burned on top, and they're very yummy. It's like creme brulee, but like
Mm.
different, something different. They're interesting. Yeah.
Love it. And just for everybody else who is, looking to find you on the internet, where do we find you? Where do we find your wonderful work?
Oh, there it is. Instagram at Ani Castillo. And yeah, Facebook or Twitter is imaginary Annie. That's perfect. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. You read
Wonderful.
my mind.
Annie, it's been such a incredible opportunity to hang with you and explore these things, and best of luck with the launch of your new book,
Oh,
and
thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to cheering you on and following your journey.
Thank you so much. I'll do the same for you. I really believe in what you're doing and I love it so much. I really love talking to you.
Well, it's, feelings mutual. Let's do it again for sure.
Yes, let's do it again.
Thank you.
Oh.